You stand on the edge of a swimming pool at age 40, your hands trembling, your heart pounding so hard you think it might burst out of your chest. You've never learned how to swim. Not a single stroke. Not even a basic paddling motion in water that reaches your ankles. You are terrified of the water. Absolutely terrified. This isn't just a fear, it's a deep, consuming phobia that has haunted you since childhood, and now, standing here in this moment, you realize that everything you've ever wanted in life might slip away from you forever because of this one paralyzing weakness. How is this even possible? How have you made it this far in life without knowing how to swim, and why does it feel like the world is closing in on you right now? This is Margaret Chen's story. But Margaret Chen is not just any American woman. She is the story that will make you question everything you believe about age, about limitations, and about what it truly means to be unstoppable. Her name might not be Margaret Chen, but her struggles, her fears, and her extraordinary journey from a woman drowning in her own limitations to an Olympic champion swimmer will change the way you see yourself and your potential forever. Let me take you back to the beginning. Let me show you what Margaret was experiencing before everything changed. Margaret grew up in San Francisco, California, in a small apartment with her mother and younger brother. Her family was middle-class, hardworking, and immigrant roots ran deep through everything they did. Her mother had come to the United States from Taiwan at age 25 with nothing but a suitcase and dreams of a better life. Her father had abandoned them when Margaret was just 6 years old. She didn't remember him much, but she remembered the sadness in her mother's eyes, the way her mother would work long hours as a nurse at the local hospital, coming home with swollen feet and hands that ached from washing dishes for extra money on weekends. Money was always tight. There was never enough for luxuries. There was barely enough for necessities. Swimming lessons were completely out of the question. Public pools in their neighborhood were dangerous places where gang violence erupted without warning. Her mother forbade her from going anywhere near them. Instead, Margaret spent her childhood in playgrounds, in libraries reading books, and later as a teenager, working part-time jobs to help her mother pay the bills. As Margaret entered adulthood, she pushed the thought of swimming away. Who needed it? She had a college education. She worked in marketing for a tech company in San Francisco. She had a small circle of friends, a modest apartment, and a life that felt routine but safe. Safe was what she wanted after growing up with so much uncertainty. At 35, she was comfortable. Her mother had retired. Her brother had moved to Seattle and started his own business. Everything seemed stable. But stability can sometimes feel like stagnation. Comfort can sometimes feel like prison. By age 38, Margaret found herself feeling empty. She was successful by conventional standards, but something was missing. There was a voice inside her that whispered, telling her that she hadn't really lived yet. She hadn't pushed herself. She hadn't tested her limits. She hadn't discovered what she was truly capable of. She started going to therapy to explore these feelings. Her therapist encouraged her to try new things, to step outside her comfort zone, to challenge herself in ways she never had before. Margaret started small. She took a pottery class. She joined a hiking group. She learned to play guitar. None of these things stirred her soul the way she hoped they would. Then something unexpected happened. Margaret's company decided to organize a company retreat to encourage team bonding and wellness. The retreat was held at a luxury resort in Malibu, California, right on the beach. There would be team-building activities, yoga sessions, healthy meals, and swimming. There was always swimming at these corporate retreats. Margaret had managed to avoid pools her entire adult life by claiming she didn't like the sun or that she had a skin condition that made water irritating. But this time, her boss, a woman named Rachel who had taken Margaret under her wing and promoted her to a leadership position, pulled her aside. Rachel said to her, "Margaret, I've noticed you never participate in the water activities. This is your chance to let loose, to be part of the team, to show everyone that you're not just a brilliant marketer but also someone who's willing to be vulnerable and try new things. I think it would be good for your career, and I think it would be good for your soul." Margaret felt her anxiety spike. She made an excuse. But Rachel was persistent. She was kind, but she was also clear that this was important to her. Margaret realized she couldn't make an excuse this time. She was trapped. She had to tell Rachel the truth. So Margaret sat down with Rachel in her office, and for the first time in her professional life, she revealed her secret. She had never learned to swim. She was terrified of water. The thought of being in a pool surrounded by her colleagues filled her with such dread that she could barely breathe. She expected Rachel to laugh or to think less of her. Instead, Rachel took her hand and said something that would change everything. Rachel said, "You know what? I grew up in Arkansas, And I was terrified of horses. I lived in fear of them my whole life. My family raised horses. At age 32, I finally decided I was done living in fear. I took riding lessons. It took me 3 years to feel comfortable. It was hard. It was humiliating at times. But when I finally rode alone for the first time, I realized that I had broken a chain that had been holding me back. I could do anything after that. I think you have that same power inside you, Margaret. I think you're ready to discover it. Margaret left that conversation with a strange mix of emotions. She was terrified, but she was also something else. She was curious. She was ready. She felt like she was standing at a crossroads, and if she turned back now, she would regret it for the rest of her life. She decided right then and there that she would learn to swim. The next week, Margaret called a swimming instructor named David Thompson. David had come highly recommended by several people at her company. He specialized in teaching adults and had a reputation for being incredibly patient and skilled. Margaret called him with sweaty palms and a shaky voice. David's calm, steady tone immediately put her at ease. He said he had taught hundreds of people who were terrified of water. He said it was more common than she thought. He said she wasn't broken or weird or ridiculous. She was just someone who hadn't had the opportunity to learn yet, and now she was taking that opportunity. He offered to have their first lesson the following Saturday morning at a private, calm indoor pool. Margaret showed up 15 minutes early, dressed in a modest one-piece swimsuit that covered her body. She was so nervous that she could barely hold her coffee still. David came out of his office, and he was not what she expected. He was a tall, athletic man in his 50s, with kind eyes and an encouraging smile. He shook her hand firmly and asked her to tell him about her relationship with water. Margaret told him about her childhood fears, about never learning to swim, about how the thought of being in water made her feel like she couldn't breathe. David listened carefully, and then he said something that surprised her. He said, "Your fear is not a weakness. It's information. It's telling you that you haven't learned to trust yourself in this environment yet. But I'm going to teach you how to build that trust, one step at a time. By the end of our work together, you're going to realize that you're stronger than you ever imagined." Their first session was gentle and slow. David didn't even get Margaret in the water that day. Instead, he sat with her on the pool deck and taught her about breathing techniques. He taught her about water pressure and buoyancy and how the human body is naturally inclined to float. He addressed every fear she had with scientific facts and reassurance. He made her do breathing exercises. He had her practice in a shallow tub. By the end of the session, Margaret felt exhausted but also lighter somehow. She had taken the first real step. Over the next 3 months, Margaret worked with David 3 times a week. Progress was slow and often painful. There were days when Margaret felt like she couldn't do it, when the anxiety was too much, when she wanted to quit. There were moments in the pool when she panicked and had to get out. There were times when she cried in frustration because her body wouldn't cooperate with what her mind was trying to accomplish. David never pushed her too hard, but he never let her give up either. He had a way of knowing exactly when to encourage her and when to step back and let her breathe. By month 4, Margaret could float on her back for several minutes without assistance. By month 6, she could do a basic freestyle stroke across half the length of the pool. By month 9, she could complete full laps. She was still not fast, and her technique had a lot of room for improvement, but she was swimming. She was actually swimming. Around this time, something shifted inside Margaret. The fear hadn't completely gone away, but it had transformed into something else. It had transformed into determination. Into hunger. Into a competitive spirit she didn't know she possessed. She started pushing herself harder. She asked David to work with her more aggressively on her technique. She started going to open swim sessions at the local community pool and swimming alongside other swimmers. She started reading about swimming technique. She watched Olympic swimming videos for hours. Something had awakened inside her. At age 41, Margaret decided she wanted to try competitive swimming. David thought she was crazy. He told her that most competitive swimmers start when they're children, that they spend years in youth swim programs developing their skills, that the biological advantages of starting young were significant, and that at 41, she was pushing against massive odds. Margaret listened to all of this, and then she said, "I know. That's exactly why I'm going to do it." She joined a master's swim program at San Francisco State University. Master's swimming is a program specifically designed for adults who want to swim competitively. Her first practice was humbling. She was the oldest person there and by far the slowest. There were women in their 60s who swam circles around her. There were men in their 70s doing flip turns that were more graceful than her forward motion. But Margaret didn't feel discouraged. She felt inspired. If these people could move like that at their age, what could she accomplish? She had been swimming for only a year at this point. What could she do with 2 years? 5 years? Margaret's dedication became legendary in the master's program. She showed up to every practice, even when she was exhausted from work. She worked with a new coach, a woman named Linda Rodriguez, who had competed in the Olympics when she was younger and now coached master swimmers. Linda saw something in Margaret that others didn't see. She saw raw determination. She saw someone who was willing to work harder than anyone else because she had so much to prove, not to anyone else, but to herself. Linda began designing special training programs for Margaret. They focused on building strength, on developing her aerobic capacity, on refining her technique. Margaret added weight training 3 days a week. She completely changed her diet, cutting out processed foods, focusing on lean proteins and vegetables and whole grains. She started sleeping more. She started meditating to reduce stress and improve her mental clarity. Her entire life reorganized itself around the goal of becoming a better swimmer. By age 43, Margaret was placing in her age group at local swimming competitions. By age 44, she was setting records in the 55 to 59 age group in the 100-yard freestyle, even though she was younger than most of the competitors in that bracket. People were starting to notice her. Swimming magazines started interviewing her about her journey. Local news stations wanted to do stories about the woman who learned to swim at 40 and was now competing at an elite level. She became an inspiration, a symbol of what's possible if you're willing to work hard and believe in yourself. But Margaret wasn't satisfied with being a local story. She had bigger dreams now. Much bigger dreams. She wanted to compete at the national championships. She wanted to break records. And then, one night, while she was sitting alone in her apartment, she had an idea that seemed both insane and inevitable at the same time. She wanted to try to make the Olympic trials. She was 45 years old at this point. The next Olympics were 3 years away. Technically, there was no age limit for Olympic competition. But realistically, swimmers who competed at the Olympics had usually been training their entire lives. They had spent decades perfecting their craft. The competition was fierce and unforgiving. Most people would have told Margaret that her dream was impossible. That she was too old. That she had started too late. That her body couldn't possibly keep up with swimmers who had been training since they were toddlers. But Margaret had already done the impossible once. She had learned to swim at 40. She had become competitive at 42. She had set records at 43. She had built a life around this goal. She had sacrificed her leisure time, her social life, her comfortable routine. Everything in her life now revolved around one thing: swimming faster and becoming stronger. She called Linda and told her the plan. She expected Linda to tell her she was crazy. Instead, Linda was silent for a moment, and then she said, "Margaret, I think you can do it. I really do. But I need to tell you something. If we're going to pursue this seriously, you're going to have to make this your entire life. You're going to have to push yourself to limits you've never experienced before. You're going to suffer. You're going to have moments where you want to quit. You're going to doubt yourself. And you're going to need to push through all of that anyway. Are you ready for that?" Margaret said yes. What followed over the next 2 years was the most intense period of Margaret's life. She rearranged her work schedule to take Fridays off so she could add an extra training session to her week. She woke up at 4:30 in the morning most days to get to the pool before work. She trained twice a day on Saturdays. She worked with a nutritionist to optimize every single thing she ate. She worked with a sports psychologist to build mental toughness and resilience. She worked with a physical therapist to prevent injuries and maximize her body's efficiency. Every single day was focused on becoming a faster, stronger, more powerful swimmer. Her times were improving steadily. She broke her own records. She competed at regional championships. She placed second in several events. She was getting closer and closer to the times she needed to qualify for the Olympics. But she still wasn't quite there yet. The gap between where she was and where she needed to be was getting smaller, but it was still there. Then something unexpected happened. Margaret was at work one day, sitting in a meeting with her team, when her boss Rachel pulled her aside. Rachel told her that the company was reorganizing and that her position was being eliminated. They were offering her a generous severance package and strong references for future employment, but her job was ending at the end of the month. Margaret felt her stomach drop. She had been so focused on her swimming that she had almost forgotten about her job. Her job was what paid her bills. Her job was what gave her stability. Without her job, she would have no money for coaching fees, for pool access, for the nutritionist and the physical therapist and all the other resources she had built her training program around. She went home that night feeling devastated. For the first time since she had started this journey, she felt like she might have to give up. Maybe this was the universe telling her that her dream was too big, too unrealistic, too selfish. She had sacrificed enough. Maybe it was time to accept that and move on. But the next morning, as she was sitting by the pool watching the swimmers, Linda found her and asked what was wrong. Margaret explained the situation. Linda listened carefully, and then she said something that would change everything again. Linda said, "Margaret, I have a friend named Tom who owns a swim school. He's been looking for someone to manage the business side of things, to handle scheduling and billing and all the administrative tasks. You could do it part-time, maybe 20 hours a week. It wouldn't pay as much as your marketing job, but it would give you the flexibility to train. You could be at the pool all day if you needed to be. You'd have access to the best facilities and the best coaching. Are you interested?" Margaret met with Tom the next day. Tom was a former competitive swimmer himself who had retired from swimming to run his business but had never lost his love for the sport or his respect for the athletes who competed. When Margaret told him about her Olympic dream, something lit up in his eyes. He told her that he would hire her to manage his business and that he would also waive her coaching fees and pool access fees as long as she was working for him. He said that having someone like Margaret around, someone who was pushing themselves to achieve greatness, would inspire his students and staff. It would be good for his business. Margaret couldn't believe what was happening. The universe wasn't closing a door. It was opening a completely new one. She took the job and gave notice at her marketing position. The transition happened smoothly. Suddenly, instead of spending her days in corporate meetings, Margaret was spending her days at the pool. She was swimming, coaching other swimmers, managing the business, and continuously pushing herself toward her goal. Her life had reorganized itself completely around her dream, and she had never felt more alive. The 2 years leading up to the Olympic trials were the most transformative period of Margaret's life. She went from being a woman who was terrified of water to being an elite athlete competing at the highest levels of her sport. Her times continued to drop. She was getting closer and closer to the qualifying times. But there was one problem that was becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. There was a competing swimmer named Svetlana Volkova. Svetlana was also 47 years old. She was from Russia and had been swimming competitively since she was a child. She had represented Russia in the Olympics as a younger woman and had never stopped training seriously even after she moved to the United States in her 30s. Svetlana was fast. Incredibly fast. She was setting records in the master swimming circuits and was clearly the favorite to win multiple events at the upcoming Olympic trials in her age category. But here's the thing, Svetlana didn't believe that Margaret deserved to be competing at this level. Svetlana believed that the Olympics should be reserved for serious athletes who had dedicated their entire lives to the sport. She believed that Margaret was a gimmick, a feel-good story that the media had latched onto, but not a real competitor. And she was determined to prove that Margaret didn't belong in the same pool as her. Svetlana started showing up at the same competitions that Margaret was entering. She would deliberately arrive early to Margaret's events and do warm-up exercises right next to her, making a point of how easily she could outswim Margaret. She would make comments in Russian to her training partners about how laughable it was that Margaret thought she could compete at this level. She would spread rumors that Margaret was using performance-enhancing drugs, that she was cheating somehow, that she didn't deserve her times. None of this was true, but Svetlana was relentless. The worst incident happened at a regional championship about 6 months before the Olympic trials. Margaret was competing in the 200-yard freestyle, one of her strongest events. She was doing well, pushing herself hard, swimming with all the strength and determination she could muster. Svetlana was in the lane next to her, and she was also swimming incredibly well. It was going to be a very close race. As they approached the final lap, Margaret could see Svetlana out of the corner of her eye. They were neck and neck. Then something happened that Margaret would never forget. As Svetlana was doing a flip turn at the far end of the pool, she deliberately kicked her feet toward Margaret's face. It was a deliberate, intentional act designed to distract Margaret and throw off her rhythm. Margaret's face was struck by Svetlana's foot, and for a moment, she lost her focus completely. She swallowed water. She sputtered. She almost went under. By the time she recovered and started swimming again, Svetlana had pulled ahead. Svetlana won the race. After the race, Margaret confronted Svetlana in the changing room. She said, "Why did you do that? That was deliberate. That was dangerous. That's not sportsmanship." Svetlana just laughed. She said, "You don't belong here. You're a joke. You're too old. You started too late. You don't have what it takes to compete with real swimmers. The Olympics are not for tourists. You should quit now and save yourself the embarrassment." Margaret felt something break inside her. She felt small. She felt defeated. She felt like maybe Svetlana was right. Maybe she was deluding herself. Maybe she should just accept that she had come as far as she could and that her dream was never going to happen. That night, she cried for hours. She called Linda and told her that she wanted to quit. She said that the pressure was too much, that the competition from Svetlana was too fierce, that she didn't have what it took. Linda listened to everything Margaret said, and then she said, "Svetlana is scared of you. That's why she's acting this way. She sees that you're getting faster. She sees that you're a threat. She sees that you're someone who's willing to work harder than anyone else because you have something to prove, and she knows that's a dangerous combination. Svetlana has had her whole life to train. You've had 3 years. 3 years, Margaret. Think about what you could accomplish if you stayed focused. Svetlana doesn't want you to make it to the Olympics because she knows you could beat her there. So you have to prove to her that you can." Margaret didn't sleep that night, but she also didn't quit. She made a decision. She was going to make it to the Olympic trials. She was going to face Svetlana again. And she was going to beat her. The next morning, Margaret showed up at the pool earlier than she had ever shown up before. She trained harder than she had ever trained. She pushed herself to the absolute limit. She did intervals that left her gasping for air and muscles screaming in pain. She refused to stop. She refused to give up. Something had shifted inside her. Svetlana's cruelty had transformed into fuel. Svetlana's disrespect had become motivation. Over the next 6 months, Margaret trained like she had never trained before. She worked with Linda on strategy. They analyzed Svetlana's swimming patterns. They identified her strengths and her weaknesses. They developed race plans specifically designed to neutralize Svetlana's advantages and exploit her vulnerabilities. Margaret worked with the sports psychologist on mental toughness. She practiced visualization. She imagined herself beating Svetlana over and over and over. She practiced staying calm under pressure. She practiced responding to adversity with determination instead of fear. Her times continued to drop. She was now swimming times that were competitive with Svetlana in several events. She had qualified for the Olympic trials in 4 different events: the 50-meter freestyle, the 100-meter freestyle, the 200-meter freestyle, and the 400-meter freestyle. She would be competing against Svetlana and dozens of other elite swimmers from around the United States. The trials would be held in Indianapolis at the Indiana University Natatorium, the premier Olympic training facility in the country. As the date approached, Margaret felt a mix of emotions. She was terrified. She was excited. She was nervous. She was confident. She was humbled by how far she had come and how much she still had to learn and improve. She thought about her mother and how proud her mother would be. She thought about David, her first swimming instructor, and how he had believed in her when she couldn't believe in herself. She thought about Linda and Tom and all the people who had supported her and believed in her journey. And she thought about Svetlana. She thought about the kick in the face. She thought about the cruel words. She thought about the disrespect and the dismissal. She thought about proving Svetlana wrong. The day of the Olympic trials arrived. Margaret woke up in her hotel room in Indianapolis at 5 in the morning. She couldn't sleep anymore. She was too anxious. She lay in bed for an hour, going through all the mental exercises that her sports psychologist had taught her. She practiced breathing. She visualized herself swimming perfectly. She reminded herself of how hard she had worked to get to this moment. She reminded herself that she belonged here. She had earned this. Nobody could take this away from her. She made her way to the natatorium early. The facility was enormous and intimidating. There were hundreds of swimmers, coaches, and staff preparing for the trials. There were media representatives everywhere. There were spectators filling the stands, people who had come to watch the best swimmers in the country compete to make the Olympic team. Margaret found her way to the marshalling area where the swimmers for her age group were gathering. That's when she saw Svetlana. Svetlana was stretching, and when she saw Margaret, she smiled. It was a predatory smile, a smile that said, I'm going to destroy you. Margaret smiled back, but her smile said something completely different. Her smile said, bring it on. Margaret's first event was the 50-meter freestyle, the shortest distance. This event is all about explosive power and speed. There's no time to pace yourself or develop a rhythm. You go all out for 50 meters and then it's over. Margaret had qualified for the final, which meant she would be swimming in the fastest heat alongside 8 other swimmers. Svetlana had also qualified for the final, and she was seeded first, meaning she was expected to win. Margaret stood behind the starting block, taking deep breaths, centering herself, preparing her body and mind for what was about to happen. She could hear the announcer introducing the swimmers. When they called Margaret's name, she heard cheers from the crowd. She had become famous in swimming circles because of her story. She was the underdog. She was the woman who had learned to swim late in life and was now competing at the Olympics. People loved her story. Svetlana didn't get the same warm reception. When the announcer called Svetlana's name, there were some polite applause, but nothing like the enthusiasm for Margaret. Svetlana noticed this, and Margaret could see the anger flash across her face. They took their positions. The referee checked to make sure everything was ready. The swimmer in the starting block checked their stance. The crowd became silent. The only sound was the water lapping gently against the sides of the pool. Then the gun sounded. Margaret exploded off the block. She had trained for this moment thousands of times. Every muscle in her body was engaged. Every fiber was firing. She hit the water cleanly and started swimming with everything she had. She could feel Svetlana swimming next to her, but she tried not to think about Svetlana. She tried to think only about her own form, about the rhythm of her stroke, about the power in each kick. 50 meters is so short. You're only swimming for about 30 seconds. It's over almost as quickly as it begins. Margaret turned at the halfway point and pushed even harder. Her lungs were burning. Her muscles were screaming. But she refused to stop. She refused to slow down. She could see the wall getting closer and closer and closer. 25 meters left. Then 20. Then 15. Then 10. Then 5. She touched the wall. She looked up at the scoreboard to see her time and her place. Her heart was pounding so hard she could barely hear anything. The announcer was saying something, but it sounded like they were speaking underwater. Then she heard it. She heard her name. She had won. She had won the 50-meter freestyle at the Olympic trials. She had beaten Svetlana. She had beaten everyone else. She was going to the Olympics. Margaret pulled herself out of the pool and fell to her knees on the deck. She started crying. She was crying so hard that she couldn't breathe. She was crying because she had just accomplished something that everyone said was impossible. She was crying because she had proved Svetlana wrong. She was crying because she had proved herself right. She was crying because of all the hard work, all the sacrifice, all the determination that had led to this moment. She competed in 3 more events over the next few days. In the 100-meter freestyle, she came in second, qualifying for the Olympics in that event as well. In the 200-meter freestyle, she came in third, barely making the cut for the Olympic team. In the 400-meter freestyle, she came in fourth, just missing the Olympic qualifying time, though she did set a new American record in her age group. But it didn't matter if she made all 4 or just 3. She was going to the Olympics. The woman who had learned to swim at 40 was going to represent the United States at the Olympics at age 47. When the trials ended and the official Olympic team was announced, Margaret was on that team. She was an Olympic athlete. She was going to compete in the Olympics. She was going to wear the uniform of her country. She was going to stand on the Olympic podium if she could manage to win a medal. The dream that had seemed so impossible just a few years ago was now a reality. Svetlana also made the Olympic team, though she didn't qualify for as many events as Margaret. Svetlana had to watch Margaret's success, had to see her name on the Olympic roster more times than her own, and had to accept that her predictions about Margaret had been completely wrong. The Olympics were held in Paris that summer. Margaret had never been to Paris before. She had spent most of her life in California, living paycheck to paycheck, never having money for travel or luxury vacations. Now she was traveling to one of the most beautiful cities in the world to compete in the Olympic Games. It felt surreal. It felt like a dream that she was going to wake up from at any moment. Margaret arrived in Paris and was settled into the Olympic Village with athletes from around the world. She was surrounded by people who had dedicated their entire lives to their sports. She was surrounded by people who had trained since childhood. She was surrounded by people who were the absolute best at what they did. And somehow, she was one of them now. She had a few days before her first event to adjust to the time zone and to get used to the Olympic pool. The pool in Paris was beautiful, state-of-the-art, and exactly what an Olympic pool should be. When Margaret dove in for the first time, she felt like she had come home somehow. Even though she had been swimming for less than 4 years, this pool felt like it was where she was meant to be. Her first Olympic event was the 50-meter freestyle. She was nervous as she approached the pool. She could feel the electricity in the air. The crowd was enormous. There were tens of thousands of people in the stands. The noise was deafening. There were cameras everywhere. This was the biggest stage of her life. She had competed at regional championships and national championships, but this was different. This was the Olympics. This was the world watching. Margaret stood behind the starting block and took a moment to center herself. She thought about everyone who had supported her. She thought about Linda and Tom and David. She thought about her mother, who was watching from home in California, probably crying because her daughter was about to compete in the Olympics. She thought about everyone who had doubted her. She thought about Svetlana and the kick in the face and the cruel words. She thought about all the mornings she had woken up at 4:30 to train. She thought about all the sacrifices she had made. She thought about how far she had come. The referee checked the swimmers. The crowd became silent. The anticipation was almost unbearable. Then the gun sounded. Margaret exploded off the starting block and dove into the pool. The water was perfect. The temperature was exactly right. The pool was still and clear. She pushed off with all the power and speed she had. She was flying through the water. She was completely in the zone. She wasn't thinking about anything except the feeling of her body moving through the water, the rhythm of her stroke, the power of her kick. Everything else fell away. There was nothing but Margaret and the pool and the next stroke and the one after that. 50 meters. It was over so fast. She touched the wall and looked up at the scoreboard. Her time appeared, 48.72 seconds. It was the fastest time Margaret had ever swum in her entire life. But she had to know what place she came in. She looked at the results. Margaret had won a bronze medal in the 50-meter freestyle. She won a bronze medal at the Olympics after starting to learn how to swim at age 40. Margaret pulled herself out of the pool and stood there for a moment in complete shock. Her body was shaking. This was really happening. This was real. An Olympic official wrapped a towel around her and guided her to the medal stand. She stood on the podium in 3rd place. They played the national anthem. They hung a bronze medal around her neck. She looked out at the crowd, and she saw people crying. She saw people cheering. She saw the American flags waving. She saw Svetlana watching from the sidelines, the look on her face a mixture of respect and disbelief and maybe a little bit of regret for having been so cruel. Margaret's other Olympic events went well too. She didn't medal in all of them, but she competed with heart and determination and performed well. By the end of the Olympics, she had won 2 bronze medals in 2 different events. She was an Olympic medalist. She was going home with 2 medals around her neck. When Margaret returned to the United States, she was greeted as a hero. She went on television shows. She was interviewed by major publications. Her story was an inspiration to millions of people around the world. She showed that it's never too late to pursue a dream. She showed that age is just a number. She showed that if you're willing to work hard enough and believe in yourself enough, you can accomplish things that seem completely impossible. But the most meaningful moment for Margaret wasn't on television or in the newspapers. It was when she went home to see her mother. Her mother was now in her 80s and had health issues, but she was still vibrant and full of life and so incredibly proud of her daughter. Margaret hung her Olympic medals around her mother's neck and hugged her, and they both cried. Margaret's mother said, "I always knew you had something special inside you. I always knew you were capable of great things. I'm so proud of you. This is the best moment of my life." Margaret's journey didn't end at the Olympics. She continued to compete in masters swimming. She set more records. She competed in 2 more Olympic Games after that first one, winning medals at both. She became a swimming coach and worked with young swimmers to help them develop their skills and their confidence in the water. She started a non-profit organization that provides free swimming lessons to underprivileged children in urban areas who don't have access to swimming education. She wanted to make sure that no child ever had to grow up terrified of the water like she did. Svetlana eventually reached out to Margaret and apologized for the way she had treated her during their competitions. She said that watching Margaret's success had made her realize that she had been holding on to fear and bitterness, and that Margaret's journey had inspired her to become a better person and a more gracious competitor. Margaret's life had been completely transformed. She went from being a terrified woman standing on the edge of a pool at age 40, paralyzed by fear and anxiety, to an Olympic champion who had represented her country on the world stage. She had overcome not just a phobia, but also the limitations of age, the doubts of society, the cruelty of competitors, and the voice inside her own head that said she wasn't good enough. And here's what makes Margaret's story even more powerful and relevant to you, watching this right now. You're probably over 35. You've probably had moments where you felt like you were too old to start something new. You've probably had people tell you that you should just accept your limitations and stop dreaming. You've probably doubted yourself and wondered if it was too late to pursue something you really wanted. You've probably felt that voice inside you saying that you've already made your choices in life and now you just have to live with them. But Margaret's story proves that none of that is true. It's never too late. Age is not a barrier. Age is just a number. The only real barriers are the ones we create in our own minds. Margaret learned to swim at 40. She became competitive at 42. She set records at 43. She made the Olympic trials at 45. She competed in the Olympics at 47. She won medals at 48. She competed in 3 Olympic Games by the time she was 50. Every single one of these accomplishments was supposed to be impossible. Every single one of these accomplishments proved that impossible is just another word for something that hasn't been attempted yet. Think about where you are right now in your life. Think about the dreams that you have pushed aside because you thought you were too old. Think about the things you've wanted to do but talked yourself out of because you convinced yourself that if you haven't done them by now, you never will. Think about the voice inside your head that tells you that you're past your prime, that your best years are behind you, that you should just accept a comfortable but unfulfilled life. That voice is lying to you. That voice doesn't know what you're capable of. Margaret didn't know what she was capable of either until she decided to find out. She didn't have any special talent or genetic advantage. She didn't have a wealthy background that allowed her to pursue swimming from a young age. She didn't have connections or privilege or luck on her side. What she had was a willingness to step outside her comfort zone. What she had was a decision to push past her fear. What she had was determination and a refusal to accept limitations. And those things, when combined, are more powerful than any genetic advantage or head start that someone else might have. Your life is not over. Your potential is not exhausted. Your best years are not behind you. They're right in front of you, waiting for you to claim them. They're waiting for you to decide that you're ready to do something difficult, something that scares you, something that will require sacrifice and hard work and the willingness to feel uncomfortable. They're waiting for you to decide that you want more out of life than just comfort and routine. Margaret tells people all the time, age was never the real obstacle. Fear was the obstacle. Doubt was the obstacle. The belief that I wasn't good enough was the obstacle. Once I decided to stop listening to those voices and start listening to my own heart instead, everything changed. The age didn't matter anymore. The supposed limitations didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that I was willing to work harder than I ever thought I could work, and I was willing to believe in myself even when nobody else did. One of the most interesting aspects of Margaret's story is how it unfolded. It wasn't a straight path. There were obstacles. There were moments of doubt. There were times when she wanted to quit. There was the incident with Svetlana that could have ended her entire journey right there. If Margaret had decided that day, after being kicked in the face and being told that she didn't belong, that she was going to give up, then none of the rest would have happened. She would never have made the Olympics. She would never have won a medal. She would never have become an inspiration to millions of people. But Margaret made a choice. She chose to transform that pain and that disrespect into fuel. She chose to use Svetlana's cruelty as motivation. She chose to let that moment become a turning point rather than an ending point. And that choice changed everything. This is something that applies to your life as well. You're going to face obstacles. You're going to have people who don't believe in you. You're going to have moments where you doubt yourself. You're going to have setbacks and disappointments and things that don't go the way you planned. That's not a sign that you're on the wrong path. That's just part of being human and pursuing anything meaningful. The question is, what are you going to do when you face those obstacles? Are you going to let them defeat you, or are you going to use them as motivation to push harder? Margaret's success also had a lot to do with the support system she built around herself. She didn't do this alone. She had Linda, who believed in her and pushed her to be better. She had Tom, who gave her the space and resources to pursue her dream. She had David, who taught her that her fear was not a weakness but information. She had her sports psychologist, who helped her build mental toughness. She had her family, who supported her even when her goals seemed crazy. She had her community of other swimmers, who inspired her and challenged her and celebrated her wins. One of the biggest mistakes people make when they're trying to pursue a goal or make a change in their life is that they try to do it alone. They keep it secret. They don't tell anyone what they're trying to accomplish because they're afraid of judgment or failure or looking ridiculous. But this isolation actually makes it harder to succeed. When you surround yourself with people who believe in you and support you, who challenge you to be better and celebrate your wins, you're so much more likely to achieve your goals. So if there's something you want to do, if there's a dream you've been holding on to, if there's a change you want to make in your life, the first step is not to do it alone. The first step is to find people who will support you. Tell your closest friends and family members what you want to accomplish. Find a coach or a mentor who has done something similar to what you want to do. Join a community of people who are pursuing similar goals. Surround yourself with people who believe in you and who will push you to be better. Margaret also talks about the importance of starting where you are with what you have. She didn't wait until she had the perfect conditions to learn to swim. She didn't wait until she had saved up thousands of dollars for private coaching. She didn't wait until she had more free time. She didn't wait until she felt completely ready and confident. She started with a basic swimming instructor and a community pool. She started small. She started imperfectly. She started despite all her fears and doubts. And then she built from there. This is so important because so many people use their circumstances as an excuse for why they can't pursue their goals. They say, "I don't have enough money." They say, "I don't have enough time." They say, "I don't have the right connections." They say, "I don't live in the right place." They say, "I'm too old." They say, "I don't have the talent." And all of these things might be true to some extent, but they're not the real reason why people don't pursue their goals. The real reason is fear. The real reason is doubt. The real reason is that they're waiting for the perfect time, the perfect circumstances, the perfect conditions, and that time never comes. Margaret didn't wait for perfect circumstances. She started with what she had. She took a job at a swim school that gave her access to the pool and to coaching. She trained before work. She trained after work. She ate simple, healthy meals that she prepared herself. She didn't go out to fancy restaurants or travel or do expensive things. She focused everything on her goal. And slowly, incrementally, she built the life and the circumstances she needed to pursue her dream. There's also something really important about the transformation that happened inside Margaret, not just the external achievements. When Margaret first went to the pool at 40, she was terrified. She was paralyzed by anxiety. She had spent her entire life running from her fear of water. She had created an entire life that allowed her to avoid ever having to face that fear. But once she decided to face it, once she decided to swim, something shifted inside her. The fear didn't go away immediately. For the first few months, Margaret was still terrified every time she got in the pool. But she did it anyway. She pushed through the fear. She felt the fear and she did it anyway. And over time, the fear got smaller. The anxiety got more manageable. Her confidence grew. She realized that she was capable of doing hard things, and this realization changed how she saw herself and what she believed was possible for her. This is the kind of internal transformation that can ripple out into every area of your life. When you prove to yourself that you can do something that terrifies you, when you prove to yourself that you can accomplish something that everyone said was impossible, when you prove to yourself that you're capable of more than you ever imagined, that belief in yourself doesn't stay confined to that one area of your life. It spreads. It grows. You start to believe in yourself in other areas too. You start to take more risks. You start to pursue things you've been afraid to pursue. You start to see yourself as someone who's capable of great things rather than someone who has to accept limitations. Margaret's story is also a story about resilience. Resilience is the ability to bounce back from adversity, to persevere in the face of challenges, to keep going when things get hard. Margaret had to develop resilience throughout her entire journey. She had to develop it when she was learning to swim and falling over and over and feeling like she would never get it. She had to develop it when she was training for the Olympic trials and pushing her body to limits that caused real pain. She had to develop it when she was facing Svetlana's cruelty and disrespect and could have decided that it was too much. She had to develop it when she competed in the Olympics and had to manage the pressure and the expectations and the magnitude of the moment. Resilience is not something you're born with or born without. It's something you build. It's like a muscle. Every time you face a challenge and push through it, you're building your resilience. Every time you fail at something and get back up and try again, you're building your resilience. Every time you feel scared and do it anyway, you're building your resilience. Margaret built an enormous amount of resilience through her swimming journey, and that resilience will stay with her for the rest of her life. She can face any challenge now and know that she has the capability to overcome it. And this is something that you can develop as well. You don't need to learn to swim at 40 and compete in the Olympics to build resilience. You can build resilience by pursuing any goal that scares you, by taking on any challenge that requires you to grow, by facing any adversity with determination instead of despair. One thing that's really important about Margaret's story that we should talk about is the role of mentorship and coaching. Margaret could not have accomplished what she accomplished without Linda. Linda saw potential in Margaret that Margaret herself couldn't see. Linda pushed Margaret when Margaret wanted to quit. Linda designed training programs specifically for Margaret's needs and goals. Linda believed in Margaret even when Margaret doubted herself. This kind of mentorship is invaluable. If you're trying to pursue a goal or make a change in your life, you should look for someone who has done something similar to what you want to do, someone who has faced similar challenges and overcome them, someone who understands the journey because they've been on it themselves. This person can show you that it's possible. This person can help you navigate the obstacles. This person can push you when you need pushing and support you when you need support. This person can see the path more clearly than you can because they've walked it before. Margaret also talks about the importance of patience and consistency. She didn't learn to swim in a few weeks. She didn't become competitive in a few months. She didn't make the Olympics in a year or two. The entire journey from her first swimming lesson to competing in the Olympics took about 7 years. 7 years of consistent work. 7 years of showing up to the pool. 7 years of pushing herself. 7 years of believing in a goal that seemed impossible. This is so counter to the culture we live in right now, where everyone wants quick results and instant gratification. Everyone wants to see results immediately. Everyone wants to become successful overnight. Everyone wants to skip the hard work and the struggle and just jump to the success. But that's not how real success works. Real success is built slowly, incrementally, through consistent effort over a long period of time. It's built through all the unglamorous days when you're training and nobody's watching. It's built through all the moments when you want to quit but you don't. It's built through all the small wins that add up to something big. Margaret's willingness to put in 7 years of consistent work, knowing that she might never make it to the Olympics, knowing that she might never compete at the level she wanted to, is what allowed her to accomplish what she accomplished. She didn't need to see results immediately to keep going. She trusted the process. She believed in the goal. She showed up every day and did the work, and eventually, all that work paid off. This is a lesson that applies to any goal you might have. Whether you want to start a business, learn a new skill, get healthier, pursue a creative passion, build better relationships, or achieve anything else, it's going to take consistent effort over time. There's no shortcut. There's no magic formula. There's just showing up and doing the work, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, until you reach your goal. Another aspect of Margaret's story that's really powerful is how she used her platform and her success to help other people. After she became an Olympic medalist, she could have just retired and enjoyed the fame and the recognition and the opportunities that came with it. She could have written a book and gone on the speaking circuit and made money off her story. She did some of that, but she also devoted a lot of her time and energy to giving back. She started a non-profit organization that provides free swimming lessons to underprivileged children. She became a coach and dedicated herself to helping other swimmers achieve their goals. She gave talks to schools and community centers about pursuing your dreams and pushing past your limitations. She used her platform to inspire other people to pursue their own goals and to challenge their own limitations. This is something that's really important about success. Real success is not just about what you achieve for yourself. Real success is also about what you're able to do for other people, how you're able to uplift others, how you're able to inspire others to pursue their own dreams and achieve their own goals. When you achieve something significant, you have a responsibility to use that achievement to help other people. You have a platform. You have credibility. You have experience. Use it to make the world better. Use it to lift other people up. Margaret's story also teaches us something really important about the power of perspective. When Margaret first decided to learn to swim, she could have looked at all the obstacles and all the reasons why it was impossible and decided not to even try. She could have said, "I'm too old. I don't have the time. I don't have the money. I don't have any talent. There are professional swimmers who have been training their entire lives. There's no way I can compete with them. This is ridiculous. I'm going to quit now before I embarrass myself." But Margaret chose a different perspective. She chose to see the obstacles as challenges to overcome rather than reasons to give up. She chose to see her age as an asset rather than a liability. She saw the fact that she had been training for fewer years than her competitors as an opportunity to work harder and prove that hard work could overcome a lack of early experience. She chose to see herself as someone who was capable of doing hard things rather than someone who had to accept her limitations. Perspective is so powerful. The exact same situation can be viewed in completely different ways depending on your perspective. You can see an obstacle as a barrier or as an opportunity. You can see a failure as proof that you can't do something or as valuable information that helps you adjust your approach. You can see your age as a limitation or as evidence of all the life experience and wisdom you've accumulated. You can see your current circumstances as a prison that you're stuck in or as the starting point from which you're going to build something amazing. Margaret chose the perspective that allowed her to pursue her dreams rather than the perspective that would have kept her trapped. And that choice was one of the most important choices she made. Let's also talk about something that doesn't get talked about enough in Margaret's story, and that's the moments of doubt and fear and struggle. Margaret's journey wasn't a straight path to success. There were days when she didn't want to get out of bed. There were days when she wanted to quit. There were days when she felt like she was crazy for pursuing this goal. There were days when her body hurt so much that she could barely move. There were days when she felt lonely and isolated because all her friends were out doing normal things while she was at the pool training. These moments are a normal and necessary part of pursuing any meaningful goal. Anyone who tells you that pursuing a dream is all happiness and excitement and joy is lying to you. Pursuing a dream involves sacrifice. It involves struggle. It involves pain. It involves moments when you question whether it's worth it. It involves moments when you doubt yourself. It involves moments when you wonder if you're crazy. But the people who achieve their goals are not the people who avoid these moments. The people who achieve their goals are the people who push through these moments. They're the people who feel the doubt and the fear and the struggle and do it anyway. They're the people who have days when they want to quit and they wake up the next day and go back to the pool anyway. Margaret didn't pretend that her journey was easy. She talked openly about the hard parts. She talked about the days when she wanted to quit. She talked about the fear and the doubt and the pain. And that honesty is one of the things that makes her story so powerful and so inspiring. She's not just showing you that it's possible to pursue your dreams. She's showing you that it's possible to pursue your dreams even when it's hard, even when it's scary, even when you doubt yourself, even when you want to quit. There's also something really important about how Margaret dealt with criticism and doubt from other people. Svetlana was cruel to Margaret, but Svetlana wasn't the only one who doubted Margaret. There were people in Margaret's life who thought she was wasting her time. There were people who thought she was being selfish for spending so much time training instead of spending time with family or pursuing a more traditional life. There were people who thought she was too old to be pursuing such an ambitious goal. There were people who thought her dream was ridiculous. Margaret had to learn to filter out the voices of doubt and criticism and focus on the people who believed in her and the voice of her own heart. She had to learn to trust herself more than she trusted the opinions of other people. She had to learn that other people's doubts said more about them and their own fears and limitations than they said about her or her potential. This is such an important skill to develop, especially for women over 35. By this age, you've probably heard a lot of messages from society about what you should be doing with your life, what you should look like, what you should want, what you should be content with. You've probably internalized a lot of these messages. And many of these messages are limiting. Many of these messages are designed to keep you in a narrow box, to keep you from pursuing anything too ambitious, to keep you from making waves or taking up too much space. Part of pursuing your dreams is learning to question these external voices and to listen to your own inner voice instead. It's learning to be okay with other people thinking you're crazy. It's learning to be okay with pursuing something that other people don't understand or don't approve of. It's learning that their disapproval doesn't make your dream any less valid or any less worth pursuing. Margaret also talks about the importance of celebrating small wins along the way. She didn't just focus on the big goal of making the Olympics. She celebrated every improvement in her time. She celebrated every race she won. She celebrated every personal record she set. She celebrated every milestone along the way. These celebrations kept her motivated and reminded her of how far she had come. Too often, people focus so much on the big goal that they forget to acknowledge all the progress they're making along the way. They tell themselves, "I'll be happy when I reach my goal. I'll celebrate when I make it to the Olympics. I'll be satisfied when I accomplish this big thing." But by then, they've missed all the joy that comes from the journey. They've missed all the opportunities to appreciate their progress and their growth. Instead, celebrate the small wins. Celebrate every improvement. Celebrate every milestone. Celebrate every moment of progress, no matter how small it seems. These celebrations will keep you motivated. They'll remind you of how far you've come. They'll make the journey more enjoyable and more meaningful. Margaret's story also teaches us something about the importance of health and self-care. Margaret completely transformed her lifestyle to support her training. She ate healthy food. She slept enough. She worked with a physical therapist to prevent injuries. She managed her stress through meditation and therapy. She took care of her mental health as much as she took care of her physical health. This is so important, especially for women over 35. This is the age when you start to feel the effects of not taking care of yourself. This is the age when your metabolism slows down. This is the age when injuries take longer to heal. This is the age when sleep becomes more important. This is the age when stress has more of an impact on your body and your mind. By taking care of yourself now, by prioritizing your health and your well-being, you're setting yourself up for success not just in your goals but in your entire life. You don't need to be an Olympic athlete to invest in your health and your well-being. You don't need to follow Margaret's extreme training regimen. But you do need to prioritize your health. You need to move your body. You need to eat healthy food. You need to sleep enough. You need to manage your stress. You need to take care of your mental health. You need to listen to your body and give it what it needs. When you take care of your health and your well-being, everything else becomes easier. Your goals become more achievable. Your life becomes more enjoyable. Your potential becomes more accessible. Margaret's story is ultimately a story about possibility. It's a story that proves that it's never too late to pursue a dream. It's a story that proves that age is just a number. It's a story that proves that if you're willing to work hard enough and believe in yourself enough, you can accomplish things that seem completely impossible. And now I want to ask you something. I want you to think about your own life. I want you to think about the dreams that you've pushed aside. I want you to think about the goals you've abandoned. I want you to think about the person you could become if you decided right now that you're going to pursue something meaningful, something that scares you, something that will require sacrifice and hard work and the willingness to feel uncomfortable. What is your swimming pool? What is the thing that you're terrified of, the thing that you've been running from, the thing that you know deep down you need to face? What is the goal that you've been telling yourself is impossible? What is the dream that you think is too late to pursue? What is the version of yourself that you could become if you just decided to go for it? Margaret Chen learned to swim at 40 and became an Olympic champion. That's her story. But what's going to be your story? What are you going to accomplish? Who are you going to become? When are you going to stop accepting your limitations and start pushing past them? When are you going to stop listening to the voice of doubt and start listening to your own heart? If Margaret can learn to swim at 40 and compete in the Olympics at 47, what can you do? What is possible for you? How far can you go? How much can you achieve? How much of your potential can you unlock? The answer to these questions is that you can do anything. You can achieve anything. You can become anything you want to become if you're willing to work hard enough and believe in yourself enough and push past your fear. So I'm going to invite you to do something right now. I'm going to invite you to think about one goal, one dream, one thing that you want to pursue. Think about something that you've been putting off. Think about something that scares you. Think about something that other people have told you is impossible or ridiculous or too ambitious for someone your age. And then I want you to take one small step toward that goal. Just one small step. You don't need to commit to years of training like Margaret did. You don't need to make a huge life change right now. You just need to take one small step. Make one phone call. Sign up for one class. Read one book. Talk to one person. Do one thing that moves you in the direction of your dream. Because here's what I know. One small step leads to another small step, which leads to another, which leads to momentum, which leads to progress, which leads to transformation. Margaret didn't decide to be an Olympic champion and then wake up the next day as one. She took one small step. She called a swimming instructor. And that one small step changed her entire life. And now, I want you to join us for the next video on this channel, where we're going to explore more stories of extraordinary American women who have accomplished incredible things. We're going to dive deeper into the techniques that these women use to overcome obstacles and achieve their goals. We're going to give you practical strategies and actionable insights that you can apply to your own life right now. These women have proven that it's possible to pursue your dreams at any age. These women have proven that you don't need to have all the advantages or all the resources or all the talent to achieve something extraordinary. These women have proven that all you need is determination, a willingness to work hard, and a decision to believe in yourself. So don't leave this channel. Subscribe right now. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our videos. Because these stories, these insights, these secrets and techniques, they're designed specifically for you, for women who are over 35, who are tired of accepting their limitations, who are ready to pursue their dreams, who are ready to discover what they're truly capable of. Margaret Chen's story is just the beginning. There are so many more stories to tell. There are so many more secrets to reveal. There are so many more techniques to teach you. And I want you to be here to witness all of it. I want you to be inspired. I want you to be transformed. I want you to be empowered to go out and pursue your own dreams and achieve your own goals and become the best version of yourself. Because you are capable of so much more than you probably believe right now. You have so much potential locked inside you that you haven't even begun to explore. You have so many gifts and talents and abilities that you haven't even had the chance to discover. And it's never too late. It's never too late to start. It's never too late to try. It's never too late to pursue your dreams. So subscribe to this channel. Watch the next video. Learn from these extraordinary women. Be inspired by their stories. And then go out and write your own story. Go out and pursue your own dreams. Go out and become the person you were meant to become. Because the world needs you. The world needs your gifts. The world needs your talents. The world needs your story. Thank you for watching. Subscribe now for more incredible stories of American women who have overcome obstacles and achieved their dreams at any age. Your transformation starts today.